Skeleton Crew Episode 3 is here, and more Old Republic references? The mystery of Attin continues to grow. Jod Na Nawood gets his official introduction, and he may not be a Jedi, but he definitely wields the Force. There are so many questions after this third episode. Now, we'll get to this in a second, but we have to mention it now. Doc Ock's Alfred Molina was in this episode. So without further ado, let's break this thing down. Episode 3 of Skeleton Crew is titled Very Interesting as an Astrogration Problem. Not your typical title for a Disney Plus Star Wars show. However, this title is describing the planet of Attin. Although these kids may call it home to the rest of the galaxy, it is a very interesting astrogration problem. And speaking of Attin, that is where this third episode begins. We see a security droid walking through the city, and then walking towards Fern's house. In the living room of Fern's house, we see all the parents of the kids who went missing. Wim's dad, Fern's mom, Neil's mom, and KB's moms. A whole lot of moms and Wim's dad. Just had to bring that up because Wim's mom being gone is likely to be important for the rest of the show, as she may be the one that gave Wim this adventurous mindset, and also probably gave him these stories about the Jedi and the Sith. But Wim's dad, Wendell, is very concerned as he watched with his own two eyes the kids take off in a starship, and on Attin, starships can't leave or enter. As the parents are discussing their kids being missing, the safety droid finally walks in. As he says, "Greetings, I have been sent by the supervisor." The who to the what now? In this scene, we get the mention of the supervisor quite a few times. Some specific person or droid or being that seems to be in control on Attin. The leader, president, dictator, if you will. This droid explains to the parents that their kids got in a starship and left the barrier illegally. To which Wim's dad responds with, "Is the supervisor going to contact the Republic for help?" Not the New Republic, not the Old Republic, the Republic. Now, this episode gives us a lot more information as to how long Attin has been missing, or at least disconnected from the rest of the galaxy. However, this scene does confirm that these parents have no idea what's going on in the outside galaxy, as they still think the Republic is intact and thriving. They have no idea about a guy by the name of Palpatine who, well, you know.
Execute Order 66.
The droid responds to Wim's dad's question about asking the Republic for help by saying the supervisor cannot risk contact. Seems to just be a sorry excuse to not have to do anything. Also because the Republic doesn't exist anymore. All hell breaks loose as these parents start to lose their mind, requesting that they see this superior immediately, implying that none of them have ever met this supervisor. We then cut back to the pirate spaceport called Port Borgo. The last we saw of our four kids, they had just met Jod Na Nawood. And although his entrance was very creepy and mall-like from Star Wars Rebels, he proved to the kids that he can wield the Force and that he wants to help them. So without wasting any precious runtime, our kids and Jod escape the brig. And while they are escaping, we see Jod Na use the Force to distract the guards. This is very reminiscent of Obi-Wan Kenobi, as we saw him distract stormtroopers on the Death Star in A New Hope with this same action. But as they are escaping, these kids, specifically Fern, start to not trust Jod Na Nawood. They just met the guy and they have no idea if he is going to help them. Wim seems to be pretty on board right away. He's a Jedi, he tells them. How can he not be trustworthy? This episode immediately answers all the questions I had from last week. Why was Jod waiting in that cell to be saved? If he could wield the Force to grab that key, why didn't he do it a long time ago? Why did he wait for these kids to arrive? Well, he answers that. Jod says he can't leave without a ship, and these kids just provided a ship. Or, as he says, the Force provided the ship. As they are still escaping, Jod senses somebody down the hall, tells the kids to hide, and Wim says, how else would he know if somebody was down the hall unless he was a Jedi? Jod then goes ahead, and the kids start to argue about whether or not they can trust him. Fern reminds them that he was just in a prison. Usually, probably not a trustworthy guy is going to be hanging out in a prison at a pirate port. But Wim says he's a Jedi. Jedi are the defenders of justice and keepers of the peace in the galaxy. Hate to break it to you, Wim, but that's not the case anymore. Almost all the Jedi are gone, and they are definitely not the keepers of the peace that they used to be. Again, implying that Attin has been missing for quite some time. Jod comes back, and KB says they have to hide again, as she hears somebody coming. Fern makes a sarcastic joke that KB must have the Force too, as she heard a droid coming. To which Jod responds with, "The Force flows through all of us." A very Jedi thing to say. But the droid that flies by is a variation of the interrogation droid from Star Wars A New Hope. The droid that Vader uses on Leia Leia to interrogate her. The kids finally escape, hitching a ride from the Teak, who again is a native of the planet Endor and was seen in the 1984 Ewok movie that you can watch now on Disney+. But as they hitch a ride back to their ship, the Onyx Cinder, we see this starship parked on the port. This is the same starship of Hondo Ohnaka, the pirate when it comes to Star Wars. He was first introduced in the Clone Wars and has made appearances in Star Wars Rebels and can be seen at Galaxy's Edge right now at both Disneyland and Disney World. And that is the reason we know that this is Hondo's ship. It's the same ship he is flying at Galaxy's Edge, and that place is a canon place in the Star Wars galaxy. Meaning if you go to Disney, then maybe you are a piece of the Star Wars canon. But in all seriousness, this ship is at some point Hondo Ohnaka's, as Galaxy's Edge takes place in the sequel trilogy era. The Skeleton Crew show takes place about 20-ish years before that. So is it still Hondo Ohnaka's ship, or could it be another pirate's that he eventually steals? Tell me what you think in the comments below. But the kids finally make it back to their ship as Jod starts to work on it, telling these kids about a friend of his who is an expert in star maps and can help them find their home world. But then they ask about SM-33, their droid that they found with this ship that saved their lives last episode. They tell Jod that they're not leaving without him, and that Jedi don't leave men behind. And you're a Jedi, right? To which he responds with, "Of course." And we'll get to it later on in this breakdown, but that is a lie, a direct lie to their faces, proving that this guy is definitely not trustworthy. But he reluctantly agrees, because the kids won't leave without him, to go get SM-33 by himself. And when he does, he comes to this room full of droids. The first one he turns on introduces himself as CZ-D2-9000. Now, the CZ series of droids has been seen a lot through Star Wars. Its first ever appearance was in the original Star Wars all the way back in 1977. But since then, it was in Return of the Jedi, Star Wars Rebels, and most recently, The Mandalorian. The next droid he turns on is an RA-7 protocol droid who is trying to save a prince. We've also seen these droids all over the place as well, with a first appearance all the way back in 1977 in A New Hope, and seen quite a bit in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. He then goes and turns on a B-1 battle droid from the prequel trilogy, which I mean is pretty dang cool. And he turns on and is asking, did we win? And no, the Separatists did not win. Or did they?
Execute Order 66.
But finally, he finds SM-33. And as he is dragging SM back to the ship, he is interrupted by Doc Ock himself, Alfred Molina. Or, as he's playing in Star Wars now, Benjar Pranik, an older pirate who used to work for Captain Silvo or Jod Na Nawood. Oh, yeah, by the way, this episode does confirm that Captain Silvo at the beginning of episode 1 of Skeleton Crew is Jod Na Nawood. But Benjar tells him how he was a better captain than Brutus is, and he wants to sit down and have a cup of tea. But Jod is in a rush. We cut to the kids back on the Onyx Cinder as they are arguing about whether or not to trust Jod Na Nawood. Wim's argument is that he wields the Force. He literally pulled the key towards them, to which Fern says there's a million different ways to make it look like something is floating. A repulsor lift, a tractor beam, a magnet, a string. But they come to the conclusion of one thing. They can't get back home without this guy. So for now, they have to stick with him. And they look outside, and here comes Jod, and he's got company. We get this awesome sequence of them trying to escape, but they are attached to the fuel line. And eventually they have to jump directly into hyperspace, still attached to the fuel line so they don't get shot down, leaving a mess of destruction behind them. And we see Captain Brutus looking as they blast into hyperspace. And Jaleel White's character of Gunter comes up to him and says, "Should we go after him, sir?" And his response is not yes. He says, "Put a bounty on their heads," which is very interesting because there was a line in the trailer for Skeleton Crew that said a crew of murderous pirates. That was eventually changed in newer trailers for Skeleton Crew to a crew of murderous bounty hunters, meaning we could be seeing some familiar faces of bounty hunters in this Skeleton Crew series tracking down Jod and the kids. Back on the ship, they turn on SM-33 and tell him that Jod is not an intruder, but he's a Jedi. He saved us and he saved you. But SM-33 is not very convinced that he's a Jedi, and he doesn't like Jedi, at least from the sound of it. While this conversation's going on, Jod makes them all dinner. So now, at this point, he's helped these kids escape from a prison, saved their droid SM-33, and made them dinner. To me, it seems like he's getting on their good side. We then get this weird scene of the kids eating dinner, as they're talking about the possibility of there actually being a treasure on their home planet. It's ironic, because Fern and Wim specifically really wanted to get off this planet, because it seemed like it was the most boring planet in the world. When in reality, when they left the planet, they found out that their planet is the most important and cool planet in the entire galaxy. But Neil starts to ask the hard-hitting questions. What do our parents actually do? They're analysts. They work in admin. But what are they analyzing? Their conversation gets interrupted by Jod, but it's a very important thing going on here. What is the purpose of Attin? Why is it hidden? We then cut to the kids getting some rest, or at least all but KB, as she has a conversation with Jod about how she doesn't believe that he is a Jedi. She calculated the odds, and it doesn't seem likely. To which Jod responds with, well, not everything in the galaxy can be calculated. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut, as he uses the Force to turn off the lights, proving again to KB that he does have the ability to wield the Force and could be a Jedi. They arrive at the moon of Jod's friend, and they land pretty far away and start to walk across the surface. He tells the kids that although this is a friend of his from a long time ago, he doesn't really trust her. He feels that she might stab them in the back. And well, the kids don't understand that reference.
I understood that reference.
To which Jod says, you'll understand when you're older, foreshadowing him stabbing these kids in the back later on in this season, or at least so I think. We then cut inside to our owl character, Kim, talking to somebody with the New Republic. And we don't know who it is, but in the closed captioning, it's only referred to as Woman Number 2, because they're referring to Kim in this scene as Woman Number 1. And in the credits for the show, it is not identified who Woman Number 2 is. However, she does have a kind of British, almost maybe even New Zealand/Australian sounding voice. It's hard to make out, but a theory has been brought up that it could be Omega on the other side of that line. That's just a big fanboy dream, seeing Omega in live action in the Skeleton Crew series, but hey, it kinda sounds like her. Kim is informing the New Republic that Jod is here and he has 4 children that he must have kidnapped. And the New Republic woman tells her they're sending out a dispatch immediately. Jod knocks on the door and is met with these droids. These eye-looking things that come out of the wall were first seen in Return of the Jedi at Jabba's palace. But the owl Kim refers to him as Crimson Jack, another alias of his, confusing the kids as they thought his name was Jod Na Nawood. Kim allows them in and asks these kids what the hell they're doing with Crimson Jack. They tell her that he rescued them and he's gonna help them get back home, which she says that she has every map in the entire galaxy and every hyperspace route to those said planets. So where are you from? To which Neil responds with, at Attin. And Kim is shocked, to say the least. At Attin is very interesting as an astrogation problem, the title of the episode. And she doesn't have a map to the planet, but she does have this scroll that depicts the jewels of the Old Republic. 9 planets hidden from the rest of the galaxy for some reason during the time of the Old Republic. What? Now, shout out to your pal Joe for deciphering all this writing on this scroll, but it doesn't give us any answers to the questions we need. It talks about the worlds being hidden in the jewels of the Old Republic, but it doesn't say why. And, well, it's missing a huge chunk of the writing. But even still, 9, maybe 10 planets, as we see one down here, were hidden during the time of the Old Republic. The why is unknown, but Kim describes them as planets of wonder kept hidden for their protection. Protection from who? And why were they planets of wonder? What do they have in them or on them? She then goes on to say, long ago, they were all destroyed, all except for one. First things first, long ago? How long ago were all these other planets destroyed? And 2, why were they destroyed? Destroyed can mean a few different things. Obviously, we've seen the Death Star blow up planets in Star Wars. Of course, I'm sure you noticed in the thumbnail of this video, Darth Nihilus is a Sith Lord from the Old Republic era that ate planets. And these planets were once the jewels of the Old Republic. Could Darth Nihilus have destroyed these other 8 planets? Or could destroyed just mean the cities were blown up, not the entire planet itself? A lot of questions that need a lot of answers that right now we just don't have. But tell me what you think in the comments below. As Kim says, the one planet that remained was Attin. And now it's become a myth, and nobody really believes that it still exists, except for some pirates and fools, like Kim. But Jod chimes in and says, these kids are the map. They are from this planet, and they can get us back. And Kim says they can search her archives through astrological features, like if there's any other planets nearby, how many moons does it have, etc. KB chimes in and says in school they learn about Coruscant and Alderaan. Coruscant, of course, being the capital of the New Republic and the Empire, but Alderaan is significant because it was blown up by the Death Star in A New Hope. So Kim's response is, Alderaan, huh? You must have missed the war. To which Neil responds with, what war? again implying the planet of Attin has no idea what's going on in the outside galaxy. Neil then talks about the barrier, the cloudy, swirly gas in the atmosphere, and that's significant. Nebular gas outside of their atmosphere. That's how the planet remains hidden, and that fact alone narrows it down to 10,000 worlds, which seems like a lot. And as Fern says this is never going to work, Kim spots this. This symbol that means Fern is the head of the class. Kim says, I've never seen Palmerish numerals used in Proto-Republic artifacts. First of all, Proto-Republic does mean old, not the New Republic, but an older republic, a Proto-Republic artifact. But this Palmerish numerals are what makes up the symbol on Fern's emblem here. So Kim says they'll just cross-reference this with the jewels of the Old Republic, planets with a nebula around them, and their estimated orbital parameters. And just as she finds this, which by the way translates to, again, shout out to your pal Joe, as he translated this to say unknown Old Republic symbol, confirming again that it is Old Republic. They seem to have found Attin, but too quickly. The New Republic people are not here yet, so Kim has to stall, and Jod knows that. He then finds the radio where the New Republic are calling into, raises the volume to find out that his suspicion was correct. This is a trap.
It's a trap!
He tells Kim to tell them to call it off. But she doesn't. Instead, she tells the kids that Crimson Jack is a scoundrel and should not be trusted. All he wants is their treasure. They begin to fight as Jod yells, I told you she was a backstabber. Then he throws her to the side, grabs the data chip that we think has the coordinates to Attin on it, takes out his blaster and shoots the system so that nobody will be following them, and then tells the kids, let's get out of here. KB stays behind to make sure Kim was okay, and Kim says, yeah, but why are you with this Crimson Jack character? Can't be trusted. She tells her to use your head, get the truth, and if you ever need my help, you can call me. And KB runs outside to see two X-Wings coming overhead, as the five of them run across the surface of the moon to get back to their ship. However, before they get on board, the kids stop him with SM-33 as backup. They tell him that they're not going anywhere until he tells them who he really is. He says, the truth is, I'm just like you guys. I'm lost. I'm alone. As Wim asks, but you're a Jedi, right? To which Jod responds with, I never said that. And like I said earlier, he did. But Neil, again asking the hard-hitting question, says, well then how do you make things float? But these kids don't know what we know. Somebody who wields the Force doesn't mean that they are a Jedi. There have been a lot of other Force users in Star Wars before. The other big one being the Sith, but even that, there are other options. Instead, Jod says, let's make a deal. I'll get you home, I'll do the right thing, and maybe I'll get a little reward. We'll be partners. To which KB says, not partners. You work for us. To which Jod agrees, which starts this epic chase scene of the Onyx Cinder and these two X-Wings. Jod gives Neil the wheel and takes Fern and Wim to get into the gunner seats. And I mean, this whole sequence just feels so much like Star Wars. This show is really hitting the nail on the head. But they eventually escape and jump into hyperspace. Off to, well, we don't really know where. It seemed like Kim found the coordinates to Attin, but what if she was wrong? I guess we'll have to wait till next episode. But this episode doesn't end there. But the episode doesn't end there. We see the X-Wings land and get introduced to a new X-Wing pilot. And I'm not 100% sure, but the astromech droid in this X-Wing does look an awful lot like R5. The droid that we just saw in The Mandalorian Season 3. But this X-Wing pilot is named Commander Kent. No, not Clark Kent, just Kent. And Kim asks, why'd you let them get away? And he says it was too risky to shoot them down with the kids on board. And he asks, where were they going anyway? To which Kim responds, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And that ends episode 3. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. This show feels so much like Star Wars, so much like that original trilogy. It feels like you as a kid inside of Star Wars. Not to mention the storytelling is incredible. The mystery behind Attin, this Jod Na Nawood character that just keeps getting better. A Force-sensitive character that we don't know who he is, whether he's a Jedi or a Sith or whatever. Old Republic connections and little Easter eggs all over the place. Having watched this episode now about 3 times, I am going to give it a 9 out of 10. It is that good, on the same level as that second episode for me. But tell me what you rank this episode out of 10 in the comment section below. And what are your thoughts on Skeleton Crew so far? Because if you want more crazy Easter eggs, I broke down the first 2 episodes for Skeleton Crew in this video right here.